The 2026 NFL Draft did not disappoint. The first round flew by with the shortened 2 minutes for the selections, and then you got to the depth on day two, picks 33 through 100. There was so much movement on day one, which led to the steals. These are the top steals of the 2026 NFL Draft. We are going to get right into it on Blitz with Blinder. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We're going to start with a couple of honorable mentions. Keldrick Faulk, 31st overall to the Tennessee Titans. They got one of the best run defenders in this class. He has length, those long arms. He is incredibly flexible off the edge. There's just a lot to be gained with him in the pass rush capabilities. Only 2 sacks last year, down from what was expected. He could have been a top 10 pick if he got to the quarterback. He just needs to finish better, but with Robert Saleh, there is a lot that can be attained from him off the edge in that defense. I'm going to go with Jermod McCoy as my second honorable mention steal. First pick of the 4th round, 101st overall for him. Now, the knee, major concerns with that ACL. It sounds like he's at some point going to need surgery. It all sounds incredibly painful for him. The question is, how does it hold up? And will he be healthy enough? He ran a 4.37 40-yard dash, for goodness sake, at that workout. The question will be, how healthy is that knee in the long term for the cutting and the movement? The cornerback position is the toughest in the sense of that lateral movement that you need to make. We're going to start this at number 10, work our way up to number 1 now, starting with the Dolphins selection of Chris Bell in the 3rd round, 94th overall for this ultra-talented wide receiver, and a lot like Jermod McCoy, there was an injury at the end of this season. He's got 4.3 speed. When he has the football in his hands, he's got that burst to him, and then there's a physical element. The question is ultimately with him, the consistency, because you saw throughout the season, there were games against inferior opponents. The ACC was not that deep and strong at the top. You had Duke win that conference. Clemson fell off. Georgia Tech had a huge loss at the end of the year. But against 3 of the best teams in the conference, Pitt, Miami, and Virginia, he had incredible production. He combined for 31 catches, 441 yards, and 5 touchdowns. And to break that down, against Pitt, 10 catches, 135, and a touchdown. Him and Miller Moss, when they were on like nobody else really in the country, save some of the best receivers like the Blitnikoff Award winner, Mekhi Lemons, Jeremiah Smith, with, of course, Julian Sayin, Malachi Toney, some of the best. But Chris Bell, with that physical element to his game, you're getting something now for the Miami Dolphins. And with Malik Willis, that's going to be fun to see him get the football to him quickly and get the ball immediately in transition into the run after the catch where he's so strong. Again, Virginia, 12 catches, 170, 2 touchdowns. They had a chance to get into the college football playoff with a win in the ACC title game, but they fell to Duke. And then against Miami, a Friday night, if people remember, the Hurricanes were 2nd in the country at that point, and they fell because Chris Bell went off. 9 catches, 136 yards, and 2 touchdowns, toasting that Miami defense that wound up making a run to the national title game. Chris Bell in the 3rd round, the value ridiculous for the Dolphins. At number 9, the Houston Texans. They maybe got themselves one of the true weapons in the sense of cerebral ability. Aiden Fisher, standing at 6'1", around 230 pounds, is not going to wow you with traits like size and long arms and sideline to sideline, but he's a step ahead. He is very smart, and these intelligent players can make up for maybe what they lack in physical ability, what they can in film study, to give themselves a little bit of that head start. He was taken in the 7th round, 243rd overall. He was with Cignetti at JMU. He made the transfer with them, and he was their green dot, a captain. I don't think they win the national title without him in the middle of that defense last year. 323 total tackles the last 3 years. And what I love is that the production didn't drop off when he made the jump to the Power 4, playing against Big Ten opponents. 22 tackles for loss, 12 passes defended. There is a guy that has the ability to defend the run and not miss tackles against some speedier backs and guys with a bit more burst to them. I have some concerns, but again, the 7th round value there for the Texans and what they have, there's an opportunity for himself to gain a place on that roster. There's going to be a chance. D'Amico Ryans puts the best guys on the field. That's all what it's about. He doesn't care about where you're selected. He just wants to put the best players out there. And so Aiden Fisher can be one of those guys. Being a national champion and a captain at that is going to go a long way for him. At number 8, I don't know how Emmanuel Pregnon fell this far, but the Jacksonville Jaguars, they're going to get themselves a very good guard. 3rd round, 88th overall. I was curious that we didn't hear his name in the top 50, and he falls out of the 2nd and almost into the 90s. A first-team All-American with Oregon this past year. He has stayed healthy, consistent throughout his college career. There are a few players in the history of college football that have more experience than guard Emmanuel Pregnon. A first-team All-American, a freshman All-American at Wyoming. And then he transfers to USC, makes the leap against better competition. If you recall, I certainly do watching him at several of those USC games. I live out here in Los Angeles, and I got to see him play against Utah, saw him play against Washington, UCLA. There were some pretty talented fronts on those teams where you had NFL talents. People know about Latu for UCLA. That was an edge guy that they wound up facing, and they got dominated on the edge of that offensive line, but I would easily say that Pregnon was the best protector of Caleb Williams in 2023 on the interior. Started all 13 games in 2023. In 2024, started all 13 games when Miller Moss took over from that bowl game at the end of the season. And then in 2024, he did not allow a sack. Miller Moss protected him. Mayava took over. Then 2025, you just see the experience he got to play and protect Dante Moore, get that run game with all of those backs back there on their run to the semifinal in the college football playoff. At number 7, I'm sure that you're waiting for this name. The Browns have drafted so well. There's an expectation that this team could be competing potentially for a wild card spot if it goes the right way with their young quarterback, Shedeur Sanders. Emmanuel McNeil Warren at number 7, 7th round, 58th overall. There was a lot of talk about him possibly going to the Minnesota Vikings at 18th if Dillon Thieneman went earlier. The Chicago Bears were a team. The Philadelphia Eagles were a team that many thought, because the Eagles lose Blankenship, the Bears lose a buyer. Do they insert this guy? And the way the board fell, Thieneman's there at 25. Chicago takes him, and teams went the route. There was that run of defensive line players in the start of that 2nd round. Emmanuel McNeil Warren is one of those guys that was not in the Power 4, but he played like it. Toledo, some are saying they could wind up being DBU. He is a physical branded guy. I don't know if it's tattooed on his body somewhere, but I feel like it could be. When he wraps you up or hits you by the knees, or he lassos you, or it's a shoulder, there's so many different ways that he attacks you. It's almost like a chewy is what they say in Swahili for what a leopard. I don't know if people know the animal, the leopard. They confuse it with jaguar, but there's leopards in Africa, in Tanzania, and the Serengeti. And I remember from this summer being out there and the way that they stalk their prey and then they pounce in such a different manner. It depends on the size of the prey and the moment. They have all of these different ways to attack. This guy's like a chewy. He's like a leopard. 207 total tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 11 tackles. 11 tackles for loss the last 3 years. The stats pile up. I get it. Lower competition, but with his size at 6'3", over 200 pounds, you have the physical element that I believe he makes the jump to the next level. Playing behind Schwesinger, playing behind Myles Garrett and Mason Graham. He's got some great talent in front of him that can help him roam and be a dangerous guy in that third level of the defense and come up and play in the box a little bit. At number 6, the Green Bay Packers got themselves one heck of an athlete when they selected Dani Dennis-Sutton from Penn State in the 4th round, 120th overall. A lot of Big Ten fans know this name. The Green Bay fans that obviously support Wisconsin or up there in the Midwest, they know this name. A lot of Packer fans very likely knew about him. 34.5 career tackles for loss, and then 17 sacks the last 2 years. Maybe Penn State struggled this past season, but he had spurts where he was dominant earlier and then picked it up later on in the season. 7 forced fumbles the last 3 years. You're getting a guy with length, with size. He's strong. He can defend against the run, and he's going to a place in Green Bay where there's a lot of questions about Lucas Van Ness. He's coming up now in the question of, are they going to resign him? They want to improve that defense. Chris McClellan's there on the interior. There's Devontae Wyatt. So they want to improve that defense. Could Dani Dennis-Sutton work himself into a 25-snap, 30-snap, a game role? That would be incredible. I just thought the 4th round value for a player that's that talented, the production and the traits. I mean, he's almost 6'6", 255, a 4.63 40 that he can run down and chase from the backside, and then a 1.63 10-yard split is very good for a guy of that size. GMs want something that's under 1.65. They feel like that you're draftable, especially when you're someone that is traitsy like he is, which with the 39.5-inch vertical, the 10-11 broad jump, he's just so similar to a lot of those cyborg-type guys that have come out of Penn State in recent memory. But again, people were wary and weren't very excited about taking Penn State players after the debacle and everything that went down this past season. Now we get into this range where this is, the top 5 now where we're talking about. So to recap the start, right, we had the honorable mentions of Falk, McCoy, and then Chris Bell at number 10, Fisher at 9, Pregnon at 8, McNeil Warren, Pregnon at 7, McNeil Warren at 6. I'm losing myself here. So Chris Bell at 10, Fisher at 9. We had Pregnon at 8, McNeil Warren at 7, Dani Dennis-Sutton at 6, and now we get ourselves into the top 5 biggest steals of the draft. The Browns. I like Casey Concepcion at 24, but I thought that they should have gone Denzel Boston and thought they'd help, and then they went Denzel Boston. He was available for them in the 2nd round, 39th overall. The 49ers went with Dejon Stribling, the first pick of the 2nd round. Shocked a lot of people. Denzel Boston has the size, and he had a very good short shuttle time, but he produced for the Huskies. 1,700 yards, 20 touchdowns the last 2 years. Remember, he sat behind Jalen Polk, McMillan, Roma Dunze during that 2023 run to the national title game for the Huskies. I talked about Washington, USC, a game I was at. Denzel Boston didn't see the field for the Huskies, but once he did get on, couldn't take him off. He's one of those guys that can high point the football. Is he going to separate on you? Not exactly, but he's savvy enough with his routes to break it off into the intermediate part of the field. That's going to be his strength. Those fades one-on-one, throw the football up and he'll make a play, or the intermediate, throwing the football layered high for him to get up and catch the football with his hands up high with that physical element to his game. You'd like to see someone with 3-level ability, but look, with Casey Concepcion, he's going to complement Denzel Boston, whether they're on the inside, Concepcion in the slot, or they're on opposite sides of each other. Concepcion can be that short guy. Catch underneath and just take off and go. Concepcion taking the ball on a slant, whereas Denzel Boston can work in an element where he's complemented by the threat of Concepcion and his rack ability. So I love that pick for Denzel Boston. 39th overall. He easily could have gone in the 1st round to a number of teams. At number 4, we get into some big ones now. These are some huge names. We're talking about All-Americans, guys that had Heisman votes, players that were in the college football playoff, guys that, like Rueben Bain Jr. at number 4, played in the national title game. The 15th overall pick. The Saints passed on him. The Chiefs passed on him. The Cowboys passed on him. The Dolphins passed on him. But the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did not. He fell to 15 in amazing fashion for Tampa Bay. His teammate Keontae Scott in the 4th round, I thought about putting him on here. But in the college football playoff and throughout the entire season, nobody was more dominant on the defensive side of the ball than Rueben Bain Jr. Sure, he has short arms. Highest a player with sub 31-inch arms has been drafted in the last 20 years. Hasn't been a guy with double-digit sacks at the NFL level with less than 31-inch arms. In the 21st century, Rueben Bain Jr. could be that outlier. He doesn't even have to be a double-digit sack guy because he gives you so much on every snap. 3 downs, defending the run. He could be an 8.5 sack, 14 tackles for loss type of player because of his motor. But 5 sacks, 9.5 tackles for loss in the college football playoff. Just ask what it was like for Texas A&M, for Julian Sayin and Ohio State, for Jeremiah Smith against Miami, trying to get down the field and winning, but his quarterback just can't get rid of the football and allow his dominant wide receiver to get a chance to catch the football. You have 2 wideouts that very likely wind up being top 5 picks in Cornell Tate and Smith. Doesn't matter if your offensive line can't defend against this guy in Rueben Bain Jr., which they were not able to do. Just such a dominant and fun player, and very happy for Tampa Bay fans because they got a heck of a ball player. At number 3, Dillon Thieneman, 25th overall. We said it earlier with Emmanuel McNeil Warren, but after the NFL Combine, Bears fans just about crossed him off of their Christmas or their early Christmas wish list because the production the last 3 years, especially the way he looked at Purdue, playing rangy center fielder, I think it was 6 interceptions his freshman season. He amassed over 300 total tackles. He had 306 of them. 14 passes defended. He does everything. And at Purdue, he played more of that deep back end, utilizing that 4.35 speed he put up at the Combine. Remember, this guy had a 40-inch vertical. I believe it was an 11-foot broad jump, and then 10 tackles for loss that he had. He can play at all 3 levels. You can put him at nickel safety, can play up on the line and rush the quarterback, defend against the run because he is physical. You looked at him, and he's one of these guys that looks like a Harrison Smith type body, but he is a fully different style with that speed element to him. Doesn't lay the boom, sometimes can over pursue and miss a tackle with such speed. I've said it before that like sometimes he should just go in at 90% instead of 100% full throttle just to make sure that he's able to wrap up. But man, that speed in that secondary with the way the Bears can be multiple. Kyler Gordon, Thieneman on different sides. Kobe Bryant, or they bring Bryant down with Gordon. You've got Thieneman back deep. You think about that Bears secondary that's oriented around corners that tackle, around speed in that secondary, and that's oriented, or you think about the way Chicago got exposed against the Packers in that first matchup, deep plays in the first half of that game against the Packers. Once again, they decided without Brisker, Byard, we're just going to get faster, and they without a doubt did that. And their biggest need truly on this team, not just pass rush, because Shamar Turner, Dio Adangbo coming back from injury, it was more so safety, and they got themselves a playmaker. The board fell their way with him being there at 25th overall for them. And now it's just about utilizing him in the right way for Dennis Allen. When the Rose Bowl happened, there's that game where Oregon just couldn't do anything against the Buckeyes in that Rose Bowl 2 years ago. They saw Caleb Downs being everywhere. The middle of the field taken away. The pass rush getting there quick enough that they couldn't throw the football downfield. And Evan Stewart came out of that game. And Tosh Lapoy, their defensive coordinator, saw that. Dan Lanning, they saw that. They're like, can we get a guy? And they went out and got Dillon Thieneman to be Caleb Downs. He wasn't like it. Caleb Downs is so cerebral and smart that it wasn't quite the ability, the recognition from Thieneman. So I would like to see him play a little bit more in the back end, roaming with that speed. But he does have the ability to play in the box. At number 2, there's a part of me that thought Anthony Hill Jr. going into the 2025 season could have been a top 10 pick because of his ability to get to the quarterback, tackles for loss. He's so rangy, and you saw it at the combine with a 4.5 140, and he's not a small guy, 6'2", 238 pounds. The number one comp that I wrote down was Roquan Smith. Not as good as Roquan, flipping his hips, turning and running, and covering with recognition as well. Roquan's obviously far superior and was coming out of Georgia. But second round, 60th overall for a guy that had over 30 tackles for loss in 3 years. 17 and a half sacks, and he had more tackles than Sonny Styles. If you compare their numbers, 249 tackles, Styles had 244. So he has a nose for finding the football and putting guys on the ground. The biggest question is again missed tackles as well as his pass ability. But I am seeing Robert Saleh. There's a plan now with Falk on the edge, having Anthony Hill Jr. play. Is he going to turn into his Fred Warner? He's certainly a little bit of a better athlete than Fred. Fred's more in his recognition. That's the best linebacker in the league. But could Hill Jr., learning from Saleh and being a sponge, turn into that kind of player? I'm not going to doubt it because of what he showed me. 2023, he's a true freshman, All-American. A first-team All-American in 2024, second team in 2025, and this guy falls into the back of the second round. The Tennessee Titans obviously starting to love that draft and the weapons they brought into their organization. And with a player like that, it's like, okay, if he doesn't turn into a top 5 linebacker, we took the guy in the second round. If he's just a plug-in starter and we've got him for the next 5-7 years, it's going to work out because we're expecting by 2027 to have a team that can compete within the NFC South. Because you got to remember, Houston, they got to pay Will Anderson Jr. They just did that. They're paying C.J. Stroud. Danielle Hunter, they basically have to pay him $35-40 million a season to retain him. And so they're losing a little bit of the flexibility at other positions. The Jaguars, same story with their guys. At some point, you're going to have to pay Trayvon Walker. And we're going to see teams in the South that lose a bit of depth, and where Tennessee's younger and can afford to pay guys, they're getting faster. I love the direction of the Tennessee Titans. At number 1, the biggest steal of the 2026 NFL Draft, Caleb Downs, 11th overall. He could be the best player from this draft. If you look at the totality of his work, the impact he had. I mean, the kid went to 3 college football playoffs. A true freshman at Alabama. What did he do? He was the first true freshman Alabama player to lead the Tide in total tackles. He had 107. The former true freshman starter, Will Anderson Jr., was the last guy to be a true freshman starter for the Tide. Not exactly a bad precedent for him. That's my, I want to say, defensive player of the year. If I had to bet, I would say Will Anderson Jr. in 2026. The numbers that he has, I've talked about it a lot. If you follow me and what I talk about with how talented he is, but Caleb Downs, he's the smartest player that I've seen, and this has been backed up by many I would say guys like Daniel Jeremiah, Joel Klatt, Todd McShay. They talk about how smart he is, the cerebral ability. I say he's the smartest player that I can remember on the defensive side of the ball since Luke Kuechly, because he's not hyper talented athletically. If you go back and watch his punt return for a touchdown against Indiana, it's like a kind of a slow spin move, and he's half jogging or running. He didn't burn it and churn and burn it and score, but it's his recognition. He gets a 2-step advantage on every play, and if you've got 2 steps to start on your NFL Combine, you're going to probably run. If they don't start the clock until you've already taken 2 steps, you're probably going to run like a 4.2 or a 4.3, which is the play speed that he has. He's one of the fastest players I've seen just from play speed because he gets a 2-step head start on, I would say, 3/4 of the snaps because he's so smart, because his recognition is to that level. And then that gets accentuated from his time with Nick Saban, with Matt Patricia, and some of these guys that are some of the best to do it on that side of the football. Remember, Saban cut his teeth as a defensive backs coach. Matt Patricia, 3-time Super Bowl champion, worked on the defensive side of the ball with Bill Belichick. I mean, man, he was a first-team All-American the last 2 years with Ohio State. I've only seen him miss one tackle against Texas in the semifinal. Glennon Helm stiff-armed him, pointed at him, and then got a 15-yard penalty back the other way. So that's something for you. But he can close, tackle, and it's all three levels. The Dallas Cowboys are getting a guy that can help improve their run defense. 16 tackles for loss in his career, 257 total tackles. I simply can't remember a player that is this much of a can't miss, and he goes out of the top 10. So there's ridiculous value, because when it's all said and done, this is one of easily the best 5 players in the draft, and getting him out of the top 10, that's ridiculous. So the Cowboys haven't gotten lucky in many ways in the last 30 years. It fell the perfect way for them when their rival could have put him on their team in the Giants. They went offensive line. Now we know that's a justifiable pick, but now instead of being on their team, they have to see that guy at least twice a year. So Caleb Downs at number 1. Appreciate you all so much for watching. This was awesome to make. The draft was incredible. All 3 days of it, you saw very talented players. There's impact guys just about every season in every round. That's why you never know, and make sure that you hear these names. And that's what I'm here for, covering college football and the NFL 365 days a year. It's so much fun to do, and I hope that I help you have a little bit more of an enjoyment for the game and learn something that you can share with and have a way to appreciate these players at the next level, because we talked about every one of these guys during the CF college football season, and now at the next level, when I do my breakdowns and previews during the season, you can say, oh, we remember those names from watching Oregon versus USC, Ohio State versus Miami or Indiana, watching South Carolina versus Alabama. Like, these matchups wind up, you see these guys playing at the next level against each other. So if you have not already, please make sure that you are subscribed to Blitz with Blender. We are fired up to go through all of this draft post content and going through it. The schedule is coming out soon, and we're going to start to have fits and talk about these rosters and the 2026 NFL season that is starting to come closer and closer onto that horizon. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Best player in college football. That Georgia and Ohio State game, New Year's Eve, is going to be a classic. Josh Blunder. Hi, everybody. I'm Josh Blunder. To the 40, 35, 30, Espinosa to the 20.